Hello and welcome to another app tutorial video. Today I will show you how to use PyCharm, which is the best Python editor currently on the market. Actually, PyCharm is more than just an editor. It's an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment, which simply means it's an application that has many features and functions that are helpful and heavily used in software development, all nicely packed into one user-friendly application. But before we can use this wonderful application, we first need to install Python, the actual programming language. Now, if you are running on either a Mac OS or some sort of Linux box, then you already have Python installed by default. However, it's not the latest version of Python. So to get the latest and greatest, let's head to their website, python.org. From this page, when I hover over the Download tab, the website is intelligent enough to recognize that I'm browsing from a Mac machine, and so it is presenting me with a download link for my particular operating system, which is the Mac OS. You can also click on the Download tab, and it will display the proper link for your operating system. And if you want to download Python for another operating system like Windows or Linux, then please click on the right link accordingly. So as of the recording of this video, Python 3.10.4 is the latest version. So I click on that to begin the download process. Okay, so the file is downloaded, and I'll open it up to begin the install process. From this screen, you can see that it says it will install Python on Mac OS, but it will also install additional things like standard libraries, as well as a default Python editor called IDLE, which stands for Integrated Development and Learning Environment. Actually, I've also heard it pronounced as IDLE, so you may call it as you please, but regardless of the correct pronunciation, this is actually a decent Python editor, but it's no way close or as powerful and feature-filled like PyCharm. This window also mentions that pip will be installed, and pip is the standard package manager for Python. It allows you to install and manage additional packages that are not part of the Python standard library. Alright, so let's click on the Continue button. Click Continue again, and at the top of this window, it actually has some fun facts about the history of Python, so I would highly suggest you read just these first 3 paragraphs as they talk about how Python came into being in existence. Then click on Continue. Then this is the software agreement license. You may read it here, or you can just click on Agree. And we finally come to the last window, so I click on Install. Okay, I have to enter my password to install this. Then let's give it a few seconds to install Python for us. And we get this window that says, congratulations, Python has been successfully installed. All right, good job so far. And let's click on Close. And since I'm done with this download and installation process, I'll just get rid of my installation files. Now this is a Mac thing, and you won't see this in Windows. Okay, so now that Python is installed, let's do a quick test to confirm that all is well in Python land by launching Terminal on my machine. There we go. I will then type Python, followed by a space, then 2 dashes, and the word version. Now this says Python 2.7.18, but that's not the version I just installed. Well, if you remember, I installed Python version 3.10.4. Well, where is it then? Well, this Python version, the 2.7.18, is the Python version that came pre-installed by default on my Mac machine. Now to see or confirm the new version that I just installed now, I need to call the same command, but by typing Python 3 instead of just Python. Again, followed by dash dash, and then version, and voila, I now see the most recent Python version that I just installed. So please understand that when we just type Python, we will be invoking the old version that came pre-installed on our machine. But if we type Python 3, we're using the newer version. And one more thing, remember during the installation process, it said that it will also install IDLE? Well, here it is. As you can see, it's a very basic shell where we can run Python code. For example, print hello, and that's basically it. Close the application. All right, so now that Python is installed and we verified it, we are now ready to download and install PyCharm, the awesome Python IDE. So let's go to jetbrains.com. This is the company that created PyCharm, and the first release actually was back in 2010. From this main page, I'll click on Developer Tools, then PyCharm, this will bring me to the main PyCharm page. I'll click on download, and from the download page we can see that we have options for the different operating systems like Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Then if I scroll down a bit, I see that PyCharm comes in two versions, the professional one and the community one. The professional one is not free, so you have to pay for it, and it comes with some added support and extra features and functionalities. But the community version is free, but with lesser features. However, for this video's purpose, we only need the free community version. So I'll click on download. It'll take a few seconds to download. Then I'll open up the downloaded file. And I'll do what this window is asking me to do, which is to drag the PyCharm icon to the applications icon. And since I already have PyCharm installed, I click on replace. And that should install PyCharm on my computer. So now I can go ahead and launch it. When PyCharm opens up, we come to the welcome screen. From here, we can see the PyCharm version. We're also presented with a few options. We can create a new project from scratch, or we can open an existing project that is on our local computer, or we can get a project from a version control system like GitHub or Bitbucket. Also, if we had any recently open projects, they would be listed or displayed in this area here. Alright, so let's click on New Project, since I want to show you everything from scratch. This takes us to the new project window, and up here we have the location field, which is where we will save the newly created project files and folders. And the last part of this field is the name of the project we are going to create. You can certainly edit the name as you wish, but I will leave it as the default name. Then we come to a very important part of PyCharm, which is the virtual environment. Basically, a virtual environment is an isolated area on your local computer that is designated for this particular project that we're creating now and all its dependencies. You can think of it as simply a folder or an area, but it's actually more than that. For example, you might want to run this project with a specific version of Python different from the other projects on your computer. You might also want to run a specific version of a library than all the other projects on your computer. So that's why we use a virtual environment, and that helps us to isolate each project along with its libraries, packages, dependencies, so that we don't impact other existing projects on the same computer. And the default virtual environment that comes with PyCharm is this one that is called venv, which is short for virtual environment. But when I click on the pull down arrow, we can see that we have other virtual environments available to us as well. For now though, we will just use the default virtual environment. The next field is another location field, but this time it's the location field for the virtual environment. So as you can see, PyCharm will create a new subfolder under the projects folder and call it venv, which again is short for virtual environment. Then we need to choose what version of Python we want to use. And right now it's set at the version we just downloaded, but I can click on the pull down arrow and choose a different version. Or if I don't see the right version here, I can also click on the three dots and navigate to anywhere on my computer to where the version that I need is actually installed and located. Then I will leave everything as is and click on the create button down here. Alright, so we just created our very first PyCharm project, and this is the interface. Now before you start feeling overwhelmed, because at first sight this can feel that way, I will break it down for you one piece at a time. So all this will be much more manageable and simpler to navigate and use. And please keep in mind that PyCharm is a dedicated Python integrated development environment. So it's a dedicated Python IDE, which provides a wide range of essential tools for Python developers. And all these tools are again tightly integrated to create a convenient environment for productive Python development. I know this might sound like a mouthful, but in short, PyCharm is just basically a really cool application to write some Python code. Alright, so starting from the left, we have our project window, which contains all our project files and folders. Then this large area here is our editor, which is where we will be writing our Python code once we have files created and opened, which we don't have yet right now. Then at the very top, we have our typical menu with different options, which I will cover throughout this video. And then all around the window, we have many tabs, like the bookmarks and structures on the bottom left. Then along the bottom, we have many more tabs. We have one for version control, one for Python packages, one called to do, another tab for Python console, one for problems, one for terminal, and one for services. And I will cover these later in this video. And then just below that area, we have the status bar area, which would display messages, but we don't have any right now. Then on the very far right of the status bar, we have the version of the Python interpreter for this particular project. And if we click on it, it opens up a small window where we can change some settings. And on the very far left corner of the status bar, we have this very interesting icon, which has two main purposes. The first purpose is when we hover over it, it shows a menu for all the tabs that surround this interface, as well as keyboard shortcuts to toggle it on and off. So I can click on bookmarks and the bookmarks window appears. Then I click on it again and the bookmark window disappears. I can also toggle this bookmark window by using the keyboard shortcut Command 2 on my keyboard to display it once again, and then Command 2 again to hide it. So we can do this with all tabs in this interface. Basically, it's a toggle to turn it on and off. We can also move the location of all these tabs. For example, if I right click on any of the tabs, I get this menu, then I click on the Move to option, and now I'm presented with the different locations that I can move this tab to. And notice that the grayed option is the current location of this particular tab. So we can't move it there because it's already there. All right, now back to this little icon in the bottom left corner. And I already mentioned that it has two purposes. And the first purpose I discussed, which is when we hover over it, it opens up a menu of all the available tabs. But the cool thing about this icon is when clicked, look what happens. All the tabs are gone, and we could focus more on our editor window as we write our Python code. And to return the tabs once again, we click the icon again. So this icon is also a toggle to show and hide all the different tabs that surround our editor. Pretty cool, right? Now, if you really want to remove any distraction in this large interface and only leave the editor area open so you can focus on your Python code, then there is a cool viewing mode called Zen Mode. And we can access this option from a few places. For example, we can go to the View menu, then Appearance. And from here, you can see that we can enter Zen Mode. Another way to access Zen Mode is also from the View menu. We go to Quick Switch Scheme, then View Mode, and now you can see enter Zen Mode again. And a final way to access it is to go to this gear icon at the top right corner, click on View Mode. From here, we choose Enter Zen Mode. And voila, the C has parted. The entire window is now taken up by just the editor window, so we can write code in peace without any distractions. That's why they call it Zen Mode. Now to exit out of this mode, I no longer have access to the gear icon that used to be in the top right corner of my window. But I can still move my mouse to the top of my screen to show my menu bar, then go to the View menu, then Quick Switch Scheme, or as you can see here, there's a keyboard shortcut which is Control and Backtick. This backtick character is also called the grav accent. So since I'm an advocate for keyboard shortcuts, I'll exit out of the View menu, and I'll just click on the Control and Backtick to open up the Quick Switch window. Then I choose View Mode, then exit Zen Mode. And we're back to normal. And one more thing about the Settings gear icon at the top right corner, it opens up a small menu with powerful features, like the Preferences, Plugins, and Themes. And all these tools are also available by going to the PyCharm menu all the way here and choosing Preferences. Or use the keyboard shortcut as it shows here, which is Command, comma. Here we can control many things about PyCharm, like appearance, menu options, key map, plugins, version control, and much more. So I highly suggest you spend some time in this area to see how you can configure and customize PyCharm to your own liking. So within the PyCharm preferences, under Appearance and Behavior, we can see Appearance, and then we have this theme option here, and right now it's set to macOS Lite. Now if I click on the pull down arrow, we have some default options, IntelliJ Lite, again Dracula, and then High Contrast. So for example, you can guess that Dracula is going to be something dark. So if I click on it, now this is the theme of my PyCharm. So if you prefer the dark mode, then Dracula is one of them. And then you can also choose something called High Contrast to look at the difference, and this is what it looks like. But if you want to get some more themes, then you can basically click on Get More Themes. And then from here, you're taken to the plugins page. Again, plugins is something that you can add to PyCharm. And from here, you can see that you can add a lot of different themes to your PyCharm. You can also sort by different options. So for example, there's relevance, there's name, there's rating. So for example, you want to get the most highly rated, then click on rating. And you can see here that Xcode theme is basically the most highly rated. It's 4.9 stars, and it's been downloaded over 133,000 times. If you want to go by the mostly downloaded, then you click on this pull down arrow, then go to downloads, and you can see that Material Theme UI has been downloaded 11.6 million, but it has a 2.83 star rating. So again, you can pick your choice. And up here in installed, we basically can show what plugins we have installed. So right now I have nothing installed, but in my marketplace, this is where we do the search for the different plugins that we want to install. And last but not least, and still in the top right corner of our interface, is this search icon. This is called the search everywhere icon, as it allows us to search anything and everything in our project. And you can see that the keyboard shortcut for this is just a double press on the shift key. And so here we go, click, click, and it opens. I can also open up the search everywhere bar by going to the navigate menu, then search everywhere. So what's awesome about this search bar is that it not only allows you to find things in our project files, but it also allows us to find actionable items. For example, say I want to know how to hide something in my project's interface. I can simply type the word hide, and look what I get. Some options tell me the path to follow, like this option here tells me the path to hide active tool window, which is to go to window, then active tool window. So here's window, then active tool window, and here's hide active tool window. But the awesome thing about search everywhere bar is not only it shows you the path to do some actions, but you can also do it right from the search results. So for the hide active tool window, notice how I have the project window opened. I can either click on the hide active tool window line here, or I can also click on the short keyboard it gives me here. So I'll just click on the line, and poof, my project window is now hidden. Pretty cool, right? So again, this means that the search everywhere bar has actionable items as well. And if you don't know how to do something in PyCharm or how to navigate to something in PyCharm, just type it in the search everywhere bar and it will guide you. All right, so I think we have become well acquainted with the PyCharm interface by now, and we are now ready to start writing some Python code in PyCharm. So let's create a new Python file. Let me press on Command 1, and this shows the project window. Now I can just click the keyboard shortcut, which is Command N, or I can right-click on the project name, then New, then Python file. And I'll call this very first file test1, and then just hit enter. All right, now, since I created this file, a few things just happened now. First, I see the file is created and placed in my project files, and it has a .py extension. Second, the file is now automatically open in the editor area, and I also see its corresponding tab up here. And third, I see more information in my status bar at the bottom right. The 1:1 indicates my cursor location, which means it's currently on line 1 and column 1. And if I click on it, I can navigate to a specific line and column in my code. Next, I have line feeds, which is the line breaks used to separate lines. And if I click on it, I can change it based on my preferences. Next, we have the encoding type used, UTF-8, which stands for Unicode Transformation Format in 8 bits. And clicking on it gives us option to change the encoding, but I'll leave it as is. Then we have the number of spaces used for code indentations, which is an important topic in Python code. If I click on it, I can configure the different options as you can see here. All right, now I'm going to bring in some code that I've prepared from before. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. Now the focus of this video is how to use PyCharm and not how to write Python code. So quickly, let me just explain to you this code here that we're going to be using. This code starts out by importing the random module. Then we have a definition of a function called hello person, which takes one parameter called first name. And when this function is called, it just prints one line that says hello, followed by first name. Then we have another print statement, followed by an input to prompt the user for their first name. Then we call the hello person function and pass the name argument, which is what we just collected from the user in the line above. Then we have a print statement that includes the use of the random module to return a random number between 1 and 10. And finally, we have two simple print statements. Now, because PyCharm is a very cool IDE, it has pointed out some issues for me already. In the top right corner, I see this, which says that I have two weak warnings and one typo. And if I click on it, it opens up my problems window with the details of these problems. So the first warning is that I need to have two blank lines before and after my function. This is not a hard requirement, but in the Python best programming practices, it is customary to leave two blank lines before and after a function so we could separate visually from the next line of code. And the second issue is that we don't have a new line entry at the end of the file. This again ties to the best programming practices. It's helpful and customary to have a new line character at the end of every line, so PyCharm is giving us a polite warning about it. See how nice PyCharm is? And the last problem we see here is a spelling mistake where the word please is missing an S. Now you can correct these issues manually yourself, or you can just click on the light bulb, then click on Format the File, and voila! The first two issues are automatically fixed for us. PyCharm added two lines before the function code and the next line, and it added a new line character at the end of the very last line. And now what is left is the typo mistake, and to fix this, I just hover my mouse over it, and I get this small window to correct it. Or I can also click on the orange bulb and choose Please to fix the typo. And now I don't see any issues in my Problems tab. Pretty nice, right? And to close the Problems tab, we just click on the tab or use the keyboard shortcut Command 6. Alright, since we fixed our code, let's go ahead and run it to see how it works. So to run a file in PyCharm, for the very first time at least, we need to create something called a run configuration for that particular file. And I'll show you what this means in a moment. But as you can see in this area here, the run button is grayed out, and here it says add configuration. Now we can click on the add configuration button and manually add the run configuration, but there's actually a simpler way, and that is to go up to the run menu and choose run. Then this run window appears, and I click on the file that I want to run. This action did a few things. First, it opened up the run window at the bottom here, and my Python code is now running. And I'm being prompted to enter my first name as expected. Also notice that I now have a little green circle here and here. This means that my code is currently running. So I'll type my first name. Let's go with John. Then hit enter. And my code continues and exits. Then the second thing that happened is that these buttons up here, which used to be grayed out, are now green and usable. So now if I want to run this file, I'll just click on the run button here and my code runs again. So let me type John again and hit enter. And the third thing that also happened is now I have something in this pull down run configuration area. And if I click on the pull down arrow and click on edit configuration, I see the run configuration window for my file. And as you can see, there are a few configurations that you can set here while you run that file. For example, what parameters to use when running, which Python version to use, among other settings we can control from this window. So like I mentioned before, I could have created this configuration manually, but I prefer to run the file initially once, which then will have the configuration created for me automatically. Then I can modify it as I wish. And another thing you might have noticed already is that right next to the run button, we have a debug button, and it looks like a bug. So what's the difference between these two buttons? Well, we saw what run does already, and that it runs the code. But debug also runs our code, but with debugging capabilities. And we debug our code to find mistakes in our code or when we need to troubleshoot a problem in our code. So the first step to debug our code is to add something called a breakpoint, which is a place in my code where I want the execution of the code to be suspended so I can inspect what is happening with my code. And to add a breakpoint, I simply click next to the code line in this gray area, which is called the gutter. So let's add a breakpoint next to the first print statement. And now you see a red circle to indicate that we now have a breakpoint and the entire line has been highlighted in red. So again, breakpoints are special markers that suspend program execution at a specific point in your code. And we do this so we can examine the application state and behavior. And once we set a breakpoint, it remains in your project until you remove it by clicking on it again. And when I click on the debug icon up here, notice also that we now have a little green circle here, and also here. So just like the run command, this is an indication that we are running our code, but this time it's in debug mode. And the line of code that the debugger is currently at is highlighted in dark blue. This is the line of code that is about to run next, so it hasn't run yet. The debugger starts down here in the debug window, and it shows us two tabs, the debugger tab and the console tab. And now it lets us enter the desired values. Now there are lots of icons here that are very important to point out. From the left side, the very first icon is the rerun icon, so you can basically restart your debugger. Then we have the wrench icon, which allows us to modify our run configuration. Then we have the resume icon, which allows us to continue running our code without any more debugging. Then we have the stop icon, which terminates the debugger. Then we have the show breakpoint icon, and as the name implies, it will show us all the breakpoints in our project. Then we have an icon to mute our breakpoints, because sometimes you want to run one or two breakpoints while ignoring other breakpoints. So if I click on it, you can see that my red breakpoint here has turned a grayish color. Then if I click on it again, it becomes available. Then the next icon is the gear icon, which usually means it opens up a settings window or menu. And last but not least, we have the pin tab. If you want to pin the debugger tab so it stays available and shown. And to unpin it, I click on it again, and the pin disappears. Okay, then the next set of icons I wanted to show you are these. And we call them the stepping icons or stepping buttons, because they help us to control the step-by-step execution of our program. The first icon is the step over button, which executes the line we're currently at, then steps over to the next line in the code. The next button is the step into, and as the name implies, it steps into the method or function or library code to show what happens inside of it. This is best used when you're trying to troubleshoot what result a method is returning, so we step into the method to follow it line by line. The next button is similar to the step into functionality, but this one is called step into my code. The difference is if you want to step into a method or function that you wrote instead of stepping into a standard Python class or library. The next icon is the step out button, and this allows us the option to step out of a method code if we stepped into it already. For example, you might step into a method code and it's like 1,000 lines long. As soon as you figure out the problem, you can step out of it instead of going through all the 1,000 lines of code to exit the method. So use the step out button when you want to get out of a method and continue your code execution. And last but not least, we have the final button in the stepping icons group, which is the run to cursor icon. This allows us to continue the execution of our program until the position of the cursor is reached. For example, you might be debugging your code and have reached line 250. And now you don't want to step over line by line, but you want to jump straight to line 800. You simply place your cursor on line 800 in your code, then click the Run to Cursor button, and the code will run all the way and suspend code execution when it reaches the line 800. So as you can see, the stepping buttons give you full access to how to debug your code and how to navigate the debugging process. So far I have run my debugger and the code executed, but then it was suspended at the line where I have my breakpoint. Note though that it stops at the breakpoint without executing that line yet. And in order to execute this line, I have to click the step over button like this. So now it executed this line, and you can see the results down here in the console window. And it also went to the next line, but it didn't execute it yet. I have to click again on step over, like this again. And since this line of code is prompting the user for something, I need to enter it in the console. Then I hit step over again. And now I'm at the line that has the random module, which has a randint method call. If I want to step into this module to look at the code, I click the step into button. And as you can see, this opens up the random Python library and takes me right to the randint method. And if I want to exit this method and return to my code, then I click on the step out button. And now I'm back to my code. At this time, I am done with my debugging, so I want to let the program run until the end. I click on the resume button icon on the left here, and my program runs without interruptions until the end and exits. Alright, now I wanted to show you how to add a second file and then run it just to see what happens. I'm going to click on the project name and then Command N on my keyboard down to Python file, and I'll call this test2 and then hit enter. So now you can see two things have happened. We have a new test2.py in my project files, and then in the tab area I have a second tab with the file's name, and the active file now has a blue line under it, while the not active file doesn't have the blue line under it. So for example, for the test2 file, I'm just going to type print, here is test2, and I want to run this. Now, before I do, notice how there is a star in the name of the tab, test2, and this basically can be a good indication that this file has not been saved yet. So you can either save it first, or if you run it, what run does, it saves it, then it runs it. And this is what I wanted to show you, is the running part. So test2 basically is what I have as the active window, and up here in my configuration I only see test1. So if I click on run, now this is not the file that's test2, this is actually test1 code. So how do I run test2? Well, the way to do it is just like we've done before. So let me just stop this and exit out of that. Alright, so we go up to the run menu, and then instead of running test1, I'm going to click on run, and this is going to tell me, well, which configuration do you want to run, and do you want to run test1 or test2? So I'm going to click on test2, and now we can see here that test2 code is now being run. And now in my configuration area, now I have run configuration for test1, test2. If I want to run test1, click on it, and then hit run, and now this is the test1 code. And if I want to run test2, even though I could be in test1 and still run test2, or I could be in test2 and run test1. The point is that now I have configurations for any file that I have so I can test with. And another thing about tabs is that now you could move them around. For example, if you want test2 to be here, then you can just basically click and drag it and then move it. So now test2 is here. And if you want to have more control over the tabs, you can go to the far right, click on the three dots, and then go to Configure Editor Tools. This is going to open up basically your preferences window and go straight to the editor tabs. And as you can see here, there are so many different configuration tools. One thing, for example, is tab placement. You can put it on the top, right, left, or you can even say none. When you do none and then hit OK, now you don't see the tabs anymore. Okay, so how do you go between files? Well, a shortcut is to do Command E, and that basically opens up this recent files window, and you can choose your files that way. And if you want to turn it back on again, we don't see the three dots anymore on the far right, but if we go to preferences, which the short key is Command comma, it takes us right to the appearance editor tabs, and then we turn this on again, be top, and now all these options are available to us. So as you can see here, there are a lot of very good options. One of the things I showed you moments ago was this marked modified. So if you want to see the star next to the name of the file as you're changing it so you can remember to save it, then this will be checked. But if I uncheck it and go to OK, and then I modify the file, Here is more. So now I've modified the file, but I don't see the star as before. So I don't know if this file has been saved or not. I prefer to have it on. So I go to the configure editor tabs and then turn this on again and hit OK. And now you can see that my star has been returned because I didn't save this file yet. And if I do Command S, the file has been saved and the star has disappeared. In the project window, we also have these two icons. One says expand all, one says collapse all. So if you click on expand all, it's basically going to expand all the files and folders that's in your project. You can see there's a lot. And then if we expand, it just basically if we collapse, it collapses everything. And then you can just expand this little area where we work out of. And you can also minimize the project window by clicking on this little dash. And now it's disappeared. And if you want to open it up again, you can click on the shortcut keyboard, which is Command 1. And now it appears again. Now earlier in my video, I did mention that I will cover the different tabs all around the interface. So let's go ahead and start with the bookmarks. Bookmarks is basically, as the name describes it, is you can create bookmarks for your files in your project folder, and you can also create bookmarks for specific lines of code. Now, this particular project in front of us is not large enough, but normally when you work with the big projects, you might have tens or hundreds of files. So you want to have certain files that you need quick access to bookmarked ready for you. So this is the bookmarks window, and to add a file, well, first, this is the name of the bookmark list, and you could modify it. You can basically click on this edit icon, and you could give it a different name. And hit rename, so now it's a different list. And you can also add new bookmark lists, clicking here. And once we have a bookmark list, then we can add either files or we can add code. So to add code, for example, you go to the code that you want to bookmark, highlight it, and then in the gutter area, just right-click with your mouse and click on Add Bookmark. When you do that, it says which bookmark list you want to add to. So let's just choose the first one and then hit Add. And now you can see on the left side that I've added not a bookmark just of the file, but also a bookmark of the specific code. And you can also see here that we now have a bookmark icon in the gutter area right next to my code. If you want to add a file, then you could basically right-click on the file and then click on bookmarks and then say add bookmark and then choose which bookmark list you want to add to. I'm going to keep this time in the second bookmark list, and there we go. So again, you can see the benefits here is that if you have a large project with hundreds of files or tens of files and a lot of code areas that you want to bookmark for quick access, this is the way to do it. And again, you can either expand the bookmark list or you can collapse them. Expand, collapse. Next tab, we have the structure down here, and if I click on it, it basically opens up the structure of the file that I'm currently on. So right now I'm on test1.py, and basically tells me, okay, so the structure of this file is you have a function called hello person that takes a parameter first name, and you also have a variable called name. So as you can imagine, if you have a large project with so many files, and each file has tens of classes and methods and variables, then this structure can give you quickly the outline of your file, which is definitely very, very helpful. The next tab I wanted to go over is the version control. Now, I'm not going to go too much deep into it, but I just wanted to show it to you. Version control is a big part of coding, and again, it allows us to keep tabs of our versions of the different files. So if we change a file, there's a history of all these changes for us. So if you want to go back to an existing version of the file, you can certainly do that. And actually, there's also a local history that's already built into PyCharm. So if we, for example, right-click on any of the files and then go to local history and then show history, this is going to show you all the different changes that we've been doing on this file ever since we created the file. And on the right side, you can see basically the difference between the current file version and the previous file version. So right now, you can see that this one is different than this one. You can also look at previous versions of it, and it's going to show it to you. And again, if you're happy or if this is what you want to revert the file back to, then by all means you can do that. But again, this is just a local history of the file itself, and it's on your local machine. But there is something called Git repositories. So Git basically is a version control system, and again, there are many different Git repositories out there. The common ones out there are GitHub and Bitbucket. But again, you can basically set up your project so that it ties to a remote Git repository, or you can just basically use the local versioning system that's tied with PyCharm. The next tab is the Python packages, and basically a Python package is nothing more than a module that basically adds features to the Python code. And you can see we have a few of them are installed here, and if you expand this, then you have access to a lot more different packages, and all these basically give you extra functionality to use in your code. So you can pick and choose whichever ones you want, and you can also of course add more packages. Now you can get them from version control like Bitbucket or GitHub, or you can get it from locally from your disk if you have something installed on your disk. And the next tab is the To-Do tab, and this is actually one of my favorite tabs to use. Basically what it is that it creates a to-do list for you. So you know how it is, you could be working on a program and time is up and you want to go home, but you want to leave some sort of a mark so to remember when you come back tomorrow morning where to start. So for example, you can basically go up here and then start by entering a pound sign, which is the comment sign, but then followed by the word to do. Okay, and then notice how it turns green for now, and then space, and then I'm going to say add the new feature here. Okay, then hit enter. Now what this does is that in the to-do window, if you expand it, now it says I have one item found and it's in this file and it's on that line. Okay, and even if you're not in the file now, you can say you're on this file and you want to go to right to this area, then you just double click on it and it takes you right to where that to-do is. So again, normally you would find my to-do window pre-filled up with so many items, and that's just because I like to organize my steps for, what to do today, what to do tomorrow, what to do maybe in a month's time. But basically it's just a to-do list, as the name implies. And the way again you annotate it is by basically starting with the pound sign, followed by the word to do, and then any text that you want to add. The next tab available to us is the Python console, and again, just like the name implies, it's just basically a Python console. So it's as if you're in the terminal window with Python already ready to take any command. So you can do, print hello world, enter, and you get hello world as the output. So again, if you want to test something quickly within a Python shell, then this is another way to do it. The next one is problems, and I think we've covered that already. Then we have terminal, and basically terminal, again, as the name implies, it gives you access to your terminal, or if you're on Windows, it's the command prompt. And again, you can do here anything that you want to type, any command, and things will be fine. If you want to call, for example, the test2 file, then you can do Python 3 space followed by the name of the file, which is test2.py, hit enter, and it runs the file for me. So if you want to test your code also in a terminal window, you have one readily available for you. And last but not least, we have services, and basically services says you can add a service. So adding what kind of service? Well, you can add, for example, a database service. You can add some sort of service that's outside the your program, and you could hook to it. So that's what services is really. And even though I said last but not least, there's actually notifications up here, kind of hidden. And basically this just gives you any notification that pops up. So if something is there, you can see it. If not, then it's empty, as you can see. Now for the coming few minutes, I wanted to show you common actions that you will probably be doing in PyCharm as you start to write code. You can think of them as tips and tricks, and the more you use PyCharm, the more you will start following these practices and shortcuts. They will just make life easier and faster as you write Python code in PyCharm. Now, these are in no particular order, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so it's very common that while you write code, we need to copy and paste a line of code. But instead of highlighting the line, then doing copy, then doing paste, we just need to place our cursor anywhere on the line that we want to copy and just press the keyboard shortcut Command D. So I'll put my cursor anywhere in the print ABC line, then press Command D. There you go. The line is copied. See how quick and simple that was? Another common task while coding is deleting an entire line. And again, instead of highlighting the full line, then hitting delete, I'll just place the cursor anywhere in that line that I want to delete. Then I'll press Command and Delete on my keyboard, and poof, the line is deleted. Quick and easy, right? And another common task is to comment out a line or a group of lines. So again, just place your cursor anywhere in the line that you want to comment out, and then press Command and /. There you go. This line is now commented out. Another common task is to add a new line of code above or below the line that you're currently at. And the shortcut to add a new line is to press Shift and Enter. So I'm in the middle of this line now, and I press Shift and Enter, and voila, a new line is created for me with a cursor nicely waiting for me at the beginning of the new line. And to add a new line above the current line, I press the shortcut key combo of Command, Option, and Enter. There you go. Another common task is to quickly toggle between the file you're currently working on and another file. So as you can see here, I have two files opened, and to toggle between them in a quick way, I just click Control and Tab, and I switch to the other file. Then Control Tab again, and I'm back to the first file one more time. Now if I press and hold the Control Tab, I see that a switcher window is now displayed with the two files, but I can also switch to these other windows as well. Another common task is to find recent files, and not just the ones you currently are working on. So I press the keyboard shortcut Command E, and now you see the recent files window opens. I don't have many files to look at since this is a small project, but if you had a project with tens of files, this window is very helpful. I can also now type part of the file's name, and the window starts to show me those files. So again, this is a very helpful shortcut. Another common task is formatting your code properly. For example, Python is really picky when it comes to indentation. So let me indent this last line on purpose. And see how Python doesn't like it? So this is just one line with a formatting problem, but your code can be riddled with many formatting issues. So the solution is to just press on the keyboard shortcut combination of Option, Command, L, and Python reformats our code quickly for us. Pretty neat, right? The next common task is the local history feature. And I touched on that earlier in the video, but if I just right-click anywhere in my code, then I go to local history, then show history, I see the current version of the file on the right side. And the last changed version is on the left side, along with all the other different versions of this file. So while typical file versioning should be in a more robust version control system like GitHub or Bitbucket, this is a decent solution to work with. At least it's on your local computer, and it helps you to look at previous versions of your file and compare the differences between them. Another common task is to move lines of code up or down. So let's say I want to move the last line in my code a little bit up. I place my cursor anywhere on that line. Then I do the keyboard shortcut combination of Shift, Option, and the up arrow key. So you can see that I'm moving it up and down, basically by holding down the Shift and Option keys together while pressing the up arrow repeatedly to move it up. Okay, so make sure that you hold down both the Option and Shift keys while pressing the arrow up. And to go the other way around, I also hold the Option Shift keys and now press the down arrow key repeatedly until I move the file to where I want it to stay. Another common task in coding is to rename things, like renaming a variable, for example. But sometimes the variable name that you want to change appears like 100 times in 10 different code files. So making the change manually is very time consuming, and you might even miss some of them as well. So PyCharm has a rename shortcut under the refactor menu, or the keyboard shortcut is Control T. So let's say I want to change the variable called name to first_name. I just place my cursor on the variable, then press Control T, and the refactor this window appears, and I choose the rename option. And in this window, I can rename it to first_name. And I can also control the scope of the change. I can make it project-wide, or just in this file, or choose a specific scope as you please. Then I click on refactor, and now I get a confirmation to do the change. And now I see that the variable name has changed correctly in all the right places. Another common task, especially when working with large files, is to go to a specific line number. So instead of scrolling up or down to get to the line you want, the shortcut for that is to press Command L. This action allows us to go to the line and the column location on that line. So this is a nifty tool, especially if you're working with large files with hundreds of lines of code. Another common task I find myself doing a lot is digging deep into a module so that I can see the methods and properties. For example, I want to see more about the random module, so I place my cursor here and press Command B, and this opens up this module so I could review it. And to back out of this file and into the original file, I press Command and the open square bracket. And again, if you want to go back and forth, you can basically do the Command close bracket or Command open bracket. Okay, so Command open square bracket takes you one step back. Command close square bracket takes you one step forward. Another cool task is to quickly surround your code with common code blocks, like an if statement or a while loop, all without the need for you to type anything out. So say I want to put this statement inside a try and accept code block. The shortcut is Option Command T. The surround with dialog box appears, and you can see I have many options. So I'll choose try accept, and I now see my code surrounded correctly with the try accept code block. Pretty nice again, right? Another tip that is related to this one is if I want to extract a line of code into its own method. So my cursor is on the right line for now, and the keyboard shortcut is Option Command M. This opens up the extract method window. I type the method's name, and then I hit OK. And notice now that PyCharm automatically created a new method for me with that line of code I chose, and it even added a method call line of code as well. You gotta love PyCharm. Now I know I use a lot of keyboard shortcuts and it's virtually impossible to remember them all or keep referencing this video when you want to use a shortcut. Plus, there are different keyboard shortcuts combinations for Windows and Linux. So to make life easier for you, I added in the description section below links to 2 different PDF files. One file has all the keyboard shortcuts for the Mac OS, and another link to a PDF file for the Windows and Linux operating system. They're like cheat sheets. And at first, these shortcuts will be challenging to remember, but trust me, the more you use PyCharm and these shortcuts, they will become almost second nature to you. Again, trust me on this. And I also certainly understand that PyCharm at first can seem very overwhelming, but I hope that with this video tutorial, you can have a better start. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next app tutorial video.